welcome to the Courtney Turner podcast. My guest today is Jakob Nordangård. I hope I said it right. We tried this out beforehand, but I'm super excited for this conversation. He is incredible. He is a researcher. He's an author. I believe he just has his new book out, The Temple of Solomon. I unfortunately have not had a chance to read it yet, but it is on the way, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. And he's also a musician. And I did a little bit of investigating on his dissertation. He wrote, it was titled Ordo ab Chao, The Political History of the Biofuels in European Union, focusing on EU biofuel policy and climate politics. And he also has a master's degree in geography, culture, society, and media production. So I think there's going to be a lot of overlap in our research and all sorts of fascinating things that we can discuss. I look forward to learning from him today, and I hope it will be edifying for all of you as well. So without further ado, let's bring Jakob on. Jakob, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. It has been a lovely day here in Norrköping in Sweden.
Ah, yes. I was saying I've been to Sweden, I believe, twice now. Beautiful. Cold, but beautiful.
Yeah.
At least it was cold when I was there.
But it's getting better now.
Okay.
Now it's soon summer.
Right.
So
we
have a light for kind of 3 months. It's kind of good weather, kind of warm, and but the rest of the year is kind of shitty.
Yeah. And not much sunlight, right? You don't get much sunlight in winter.
Not during winter, but during summer, it's a lot of sunshine because the sun never really sets, you know. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you guys had the whole like red light therapy lamp boxes long before it became trendy here, I think, for the seasonal affected disorders, right? Yeah,
I guess so.
Yeah,
but it's perfect if you want to do research. Long winter months that you can't go out and do funny things. You just can sit at home and do your studies instead.
Lock yourself up and get it done. Yeah. For my audience who's not as familiar with your work, can you give us a little bit of a backdrop as to what made you go into, like, why did you even get a PhD in this field of, like, the biofuels and climate policy? Like, what interested you in that?
Yes. The thing is, I never intended to become a PhD. I've just been a curious soul, and one day I asked myself, or it's like very early in life, I've been a very skeptic person, and asked myself how power operates in the world, and that was reflected in my music that I was very much into in the beginning of my life, and but the PhD thing, it came after I had stumbled on something called the peak oil theory. And I was in my early 30s, and I read a couple of very, very scary reports about how the oil would run out within 10 years or something. And that was not good for me at that time, because I really believed these things, and I decided I wanted to know if this is true, and how will this affect society, and are there any alternatives? So I started to study geography at the university, and as I started to look on alternative sources of energy, and that was biofuels. Is it possible that you can use biofuels instead of oil, and so on? And that led me into first it was do we have enough biomass to do it? And I concluded, no, it's not possible without an oil-driven economy. So it was essentially my conclusion that you have to have an oil economy to do these come up with these alternatives to oil. So it was kind of impossible, and that led me into PhD studies about how European Union viewed biofuels, and because they had this huge program with renewable energy that the Commission came up with in the early 2000s. And I investigated it and then wanted to know, because it was a very, very interesting contradiction in because I followed actors involved in the biofuels policy, and at that time there was one team that said that we have to have biofuels because of climate change, and another team that was saying no, we can't use biofuels because of climate change. It will cause more carbon dioxide, more release of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and so both sides said. It was all about climate change, but it was kind of a conflict.
Contradiction,
so,
but the
contradiction,
cause
and
is climate change.
I really wanted to know how come, and who are behind this. Who are the powerful players in setting policy? So that was the things that I started on with the PhD thesis.
Right. And so that led you to find, did you find the powerful players at that time, or has this been ongoing?
I found them because the thing is, I had started to investigate the peak oil theory and the oil markets. I was so I essentially read everything I could about it. Right. And of course, if you go into energy, you run into the powerful players running the energy business, and we know who those are, and who has been kind of are behind the oil economy, and how this has been a part of a globalization process the whole 20th century, essentially. And so when I started with my that's okay. Here we have oil production, and yes, that's the peak oil curve, by the way. But as I started to investigate this, I found out that the powerful players behind the oil companies were the same that were promoting climate alarmism.
Right.
And that kind of surprised me, because I had been a member of the Green Party in Sweden, and an environmentalist, caring for the environment and all these things. So it was very, very strange for me to find out that behind these environmental organizations and think tanks that I have been admiring before, but I found that people that had founded these had connections to the big oil, and that. I thought it was kind of scary at first. I did a background study about this, because I asked myself, how did this start with with climate alarmism, and so I made this study, and then I was supposed to write a couple of pages for my PhD thesis, but it ended up with like 50 pages.
Right.
I, I understood that this is wow. I was kind of well scared when I found out, because it was like this information, it could get me in trouble. Because I knew this is very, very powerful people and networks involved in this, and they want the view that we have these environmentalists like Greta, and they are opposing the kind of industry that themselves are part of.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a strange thing, and also with as I had this paper ready, I wanted to have a seminar with my colleagues at the university, and my my colleagues that were PhD students, they read this and thought it was kind of interesting, kind of not what they had expected. But the senior researchers, they were dismissive, and it was like, don't go into this.
Right.
Concentrate on the conflicts between the proponents of biofuels and those who don't like biofuels. Do that, but don't go into the background. Don't just discuss the debate. Don't go into the actors behind it and the networks. But that was what I wanted to know.
Of course.
Because I really, really wanted to know how these power networks operates.
Right.
So it was a very, very interesting journey to write this thesis. I spent 5 years with this.
Oh, wow. 5 years.
Yeah.
So who did you find were the big power players then? And are they still the same that are? So now I feel like things have shifted a little bit, right? So it was all about the green energy, the big scary like greenhouse gas emissions or CO2, of course, where the carbon they want to reduce. We've had the Club of Rome's Limits of Growth document in 1972, where they tell us, humans are creating all the problems. Then in 1992, the Global Revolution document, they admit that was propaganda. They lied, but we still have to rally behind this common enemy of humanity, which is man himself. Sorry, yeah.
Exactly, that's what I found, and especially the Club of Rome. Club of Rome was very, very involved in this process, and also with the biofuels policy in the European Union. And what I found that we had these international networks that were working behind the scenes and influencing European Union policy. And behind Club of Rome, you found the Rockefeller Foundation and these big philanthropies that was what I found out about the whole policy of the European Union, but that these big, powerful philanthropies were very, very, very involved, and they set up organizations to work for them, and in a few cases they it's like they just went to the European Commission and they had their proposal ready, and the commissioner just said thank you, and I can just follow how this got implemented in European Commission policy, and stamped approval in the Parliament afterwards, because one of the main people involved in energy policy in the European Union Parliament. He was he became the president of the Club of Rome. So it was very, very obvious that it was their playing ground. And I actually interviewed him, and he said, okay, I own energy policy in the parliament.
Oh, wow.
Because he was a kind of a narcissistic person, so he liked to brag about how important he was, and he assumed that I was admiring him, and
Right.
so I could got a lot of information from him,
Sure.
and so I followed his work very closely, and but he didn't appreciate this, so in the end. He actually tried to intervene when I defended the thesis and tried to stop it from being published.
Really? Wow.
So he phoned the opponent the evening before my defense, and they also phoned my former supervisor. He phoned the grading committee president, and he threatened to go to the president of the university, and so. That was I mean, I said I was scared before with what I found early on in my research, and then in the end it was like, okay, this was dangerous stuff, and they didn't want to. It's like that if I'm an academic, PhD. Right. So this has some value and approval. So it could create problems for them if this got widely spread. So of course they wanted to stop it, but they didn't succeed. And they refused to listen to him and said, no, you can't come here and try to influence our grading committee. So it got approved, but of course it created a lot of problems for me because it was like, okay, we approve it because we think it could create more problems if we don't, but we have to hide it anyway from the ordinary public. And so they stopped the press release, and they stopped the interview I gave for it, and there were also a couple of networks involved trying to kind of spread rumors about me and so on. So it was not funny. I had worked for this for 5 years, and being treated like that wasn't
not fun.
Not fun. But I knew I had to do it. It was important for me.
Right. So they approved it mostly because they thought that not approving it would create more like noise and potentially make it more kind of like what they call a Streisand effect, right? When they censor something and it becomes even more well-known. So they thought if they just like pushed it through and kept it quiet and just censored all of the media around it, that would be better than if they
they thought that, but it backfired for them because a lot of people started to come up with questions. Why is this thesis so deemed so controversial that we're not allowed to speak about it?
Right.
So it actually became the most downloaded doctoral thesis at my institution, and it's still the most downloaded.
Wow.
So it was more a success story for me in the end.
So I'm curious with, and you've done some recent Substacks talking about like the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the technocracy stuff. And I recently did, and I just found out one of my audience members had put it up on Facebook and it got taken down within an hour. So, Facebook doesn't love me, so I'm not super surprised, but this must have been they were not approving. I guess that's a new form of censorship. It's through the technology.
Yeah.
But it was on I had posited a thesis that we are now experiencing a dialectic between the two operating through the left and the right. It's not really accurate to say left or right, but they operate through those channels in order to wear those exoteric veneers to lure people in, to cheer for their team. You understand what I'm saying, right? But ultimately their goal is still to foment the technocracy. And I see it as we've got these two kind of particularly in this country, although I think it has a much more like supranational kind of impact and forces behind it. But we've got this thing, Game B. I don't know if you're familiar with Game B. Have you heard of Game B? Game B.
No.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. But we've got Game B, and then we've got the Dark Enlightenment. And the Dark Enlightenment, you're familiar with that one, right?
I know about. Yeah.
And so I see Game B as kind of like appealing to the left-leaning kind of groups, but their end goal is still this technocratic, kind of more in the H.G. Wells sense of creating a world brain, because it's they keep using the buzzwords decentralized, but I think they mean it in the H.G. Wells sense of creating the world brain. He said the decentralized institutions, information institutions, would lead to the world brain. And then, of course, the Dark Enlightenment, which it sounds like you're familiar, they're all surrounding Trump. And it's all of these, tech bros, oligarchs who are Silicon Valley.
Peter Thiel, especially.
Yes. So what I'm finding interesting, I'm curious your thoughts on this, is they're still all using this narrative of we have to save the planet from, this climate crisis as their justification for, their plan. The way that they claim they're going about it is slightly different. The Dark Enlightenment accelerationist policies or philosophies, rather, I should say, that are underpinning them are slightly different than the Game B folks, but their telos is very much shared. It's still all about creating this monistic kind of Teilhard de Chardin type of noosphere vision.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can give you just a tiny little backdrop on Game B, just if you're not familiar, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and if you can tie that all together for us. But Game B is it started, I guess, around like 2011 is what Jim Rudd, who's kind of the grandfather of this concept, claimed, and it started out as a proposal to create a new political, although there were a lot of economic policies in this political party that they wanted to create called the Emancipation Party, and it's really under the umbrella of what they call transpolitical. And I think this transpolitical movement is very concerning. I think, and you might think of it in terms of like the third way. I think that's really right. They're trying to and a lot of people are being lured into this because they can see that there's some flaws in the two-party system that we have here, or in even in other countries they're doing this transpolitical movement, because the political factions create warring factions that create Hegelian dialectics, and a lot of people recognize this. In our country, George Washington warned us against the two-party system from the very beginning. So they're using that, right? Like, here's the problem. They're saying, here's the solution. We're create this, kind of one banner. We'll all come together, kumbaya, if you will, and create this transpolitical movement. So I think it's very deceptive, and I think it's very potentially pernicious, because it lures a lot of people in who recognize there's a problem. They see that as being the solution, but I think it's a false sense. It's a utopia, right? Utopia is nowhere. And I think it could lead to dystopian outcomes, unfortunately. But that's what kind of the banner, this Emancipation Party, and they wanted things like a universal basic income. They wanted universal health care, very like Bernie Sanders socialist type of policies. But the party never got off the ground, mostly because they said that they couldn't get the millennials on board because they were mostly anarchists, and the idea of a political movement was just an anathema to them. And so there was one of the members was Thor Mueller, and he said we should still keep Game B for branding purposes. And they splintered. They had these meetings called the Stanton meetings, Stanton, Virginia, kind of outside D.C. area. And they had these meetings, and in these meetings were people like Jim Rutt was a chairman of the Santa Fe Institute. They do like complexity theory, systems theory, and he was a chairman, I believe, for over a decade. And then he met Jordan Hall there, who Jordan Hall's like a tech entrepreneur, very now a philosopher as well, but he's very involved in this movement. The two of them were kind of the OG group members, and then also Brett Weinstein. And I had in that video, I had read a bunch from the Andrew Cohen's. He, Manifest Nirvana. He talks about, I had a theory, and he pretty much admitted this theory, that the intellectual dark web was kind of an influence operation for, he doesn't use these words, so that's my interpretation of what he said, but it's pretty much what he spelled out, that it was an influence operation for, whether intentionally or just, as a result of, for Game B. So they're all kind of, they use the words decentralized, and they talk about creating essentially network states. They don't use, the term necessarily, although now Jordan Hall is starting to talk about network states outright. Like, but they talk about these technologies like holochain. And so those are the two, but they tend to be a little bit more in the woo camp, a lot of them are disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was, very influenced by Desjardins.
Barbara.
Barbara, good old Barbara with her. Yes, exactly. Where she, I think that's the book where she talks about how Christ is transhuman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have quoted her a lot in the.
Oh, did you? Okay. I can't wait to read
book.
This. I love the cover too, the artwork.
And also in this book,
the Rockefeller book.
Book, yeah. Yes, very interesting.
And they have. I'll just add one more thing to that. So one of the things they talk about in Game B is they've talked about how B corporations are a great part of proto-Bs. And interestingly enough, Jim Rutt in his manifesto, like A Journey to Game B, he writes, I think this was back in 2018, although he keeps updating it, it's on Medium. He says that the, kind of emergence of Game B will be in 2045, which I think is a very interesting year because Ray Kurzweil says that's the singularity. That's when the AI World Society says that, right? So interesting timing. I don't know if that was intentional, but I have a hard time thinking.
And 2045 is also when United Nations becomes 100.
Yeah, the AI World Society.
Yeah, I mean, the United Nations will be 100 year.
Yeah. They're doing, but that's what they say for their centennial. It's in partnership with Boston Global Forum, right? Yeah.
Oh no, Barbara.
Evolution by the co-creation. Yeah, and they all talk about Game B. They all talk about co-creation. A lot of them, there are many evolutionary leaders. Yes. Okay. So I'm curious your thoughts on, I see it as like they're presenting these two Hegelian poles, but ultimately they're both leading towards a technological singularity, a noosphere. I've heard you talk about like a nocracy. I think that was fascinating. That's this concept of because I think that's exactly, which is like straight out of Plato, right? The philosopher kings are going to
Yes, it is. Yeah. So yes, it was. I think it's been very interesting to follow this because I, for a long time, because I found out about Barbara Marx Hubbard I think it was in 2009, 2010, and all these people that were involved in that team. So I followed them, and because they have been also very influential with United Nations, and just before this, I watched a clip from Barbara Marx Hubbard talking at the United Nations in 2016 at a high-level panel. And it was actually posted by the Losers Trust. Yeah. Also, but I've written a lot about it as well. And very, very connected, of course, to this idea of supranational organizations and how we're going to become as one.
Yes.
And that's the Losers Trust.
Yes.
Okay.
Like the plan might work out. Yes.
So I followed this also with because I agree we have this it's Hegelian dialectics and we have and as I wrote about this last year with the incoming Trump administration and even before that he had won that I can see now the people involved and I mean with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the whole PayPal mafia. So yeah, and it's just was very obvious to see that it will lead to the same outcome in the end, and it's like I written about do you know about the World Future Society?
Yeah. Barbara Marx Hubbard
Yeah.
was very involved, and so were
Yeah,
a lot of
Barbara
the
Marx
Game B
Hubbard
people.
was actually, yeah, she was actually one of the most important people in that organizations.
Yeah.
But I wrote about in my Rockefeller book about some meetings they had in the 70s and 80s, and one of the first meetings, it was actually Nelson Rockefeller as a vice president. He was presented this meeting, and was the first speaker. And at that meeting, they had the Club of Rome attending. And the Club of Rome, with their ideas about the global governance and upgrading United Nations and everything, and that we had scarcity with resources, and that meant we have to develop new technologies for the future to deal with this, and kind of a more regulated top-down management of society. But on the other side, we had someone like Herman Kahn, that was a techno-optimist, and said that we have so much resources, it's no problems at all. And they had in 1980, we had a panel at the first global conference on the future with World Food Society. It was in Canada, and we had people like Boris Strong attending. And they put up two teams at that meeting. One team was the techno-optimists with Herman Kahn, and presented their view. And the other team, it was the more strong team, the Club of Rome people, that said we have to scare people with climate change, more or less. And at the end of his session, they said, well, we decide to go with the Club of Rome team. So that was, they essentially had these two sides already in 1980, and I followed this in the Rockefeller book, how they worked with this. And out of the World Future Society, we also had all these New Age gurus that yeah, because I found that very intriguing with World Future Society, and this they love technology, and all these ideas of already in 1980 we talked about brain chip implants and stuff, and how come out of this we have these New Age gurus that talked about evolution and co-evolution. It was very, 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 very strange when I first
encountered it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
no, it is. And I think they're very, very tied. This, this New Age, which really goes all the way back, right, to the ancient mystery religions and the Neoplatonists. It's a very similar, it's kind of just a neo version of those belief systems, and a syncretic version of those belief systems.
yeah.
But they're very tied to this, I call it the technological immanentization of the eschaton. That's very much what I see them doing. And people think at first it looks very strange. Like, why would you think that the New Age or the New Thought people now are connected to this, technological singularity concept? But it looks like they're very much intertwined. And I think
and with Barbara.
With Barbara. Barbara at the helm.
I just read this. I usually tell people that are into the New Age movement that, okay, read Barbara. She's saying it herself. It's just to read it.
Yeah, she flat out says it. She spells it all out. And now we've got her disciples are very much. So I think even with the Dark Enlightenment, though, a lot of them are very inspired by a lot of this occult stuff too. It's just a slightly different, right? That's why I see one working through the right, one working through the left. But the Dark Enlightenment people are very inspired by people like Julius Evola, right? It's a lot of kind of occult type of.
It's alchemy.
Yes.
It's chemical transformation, and it's Kabbalah. That's what I write about in the Temple of Solomon book.
Okay. Can you give us a little teaser of what you have in there?
Well, it's a kind of special book because it started as a musical project.
Oh,
I don't know if you have read about the book or anything.
I've read a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because I have this band called Wardenclyffe, and actually named after the Wardenclyffe Tower that Nikola Tesla built outside New York. Because I found a lot of references to Nikola Tesla during my studies, and a lot of these occult people involved in New Age movement. They referred a lot to Tesla. So I built a little universe with these ideas, and also it was reflected in my music. So my music was kind of a project but I. On one hand, to let out some steam during my PhD years, and just to create music and be able to express myself more freely, but also as a kind of more serious music project with where I dived into these topics, and I wrote lyrics about the agenda. And the Temple of Solomon project was this was more or less the crown of this, because in this I wrote the whole album. We made the album, and recorded in during the pandemic in 2020, and after that I had a lecture series in Sweden. It was during, the rest of the world was in lockdown, but I went out in Sweden. Sweden were more open than the rest of the world, but still we weren't allowed to meet in larger groups, and so it was kind of a crazy time.
Yes.
But I had this lecture series, and I talked about each of the songs on the album. And this is a historical journey. So I started out with a song called Mortlake, and that's about Dr. John Dee in the Elizabethan court in Elizabeth I. Yeah. He was the magus.
Yes.
And very, very interesting figure, and into Kabbalah, of course, and
a wizard.
Well, a wizard with divination, and wanted to know about the future, and studying and trying to come in contact with the angels to gain wisdom from God, and so very interesting figure. So the book. Because it became a book, because I decided when I had this lecture series, I talked for 2 hours about each song, and then I put for each lecture and rewrote it as chapters, and because I decided I wanted to release this as a book. So it came out in December last year. I started out with the idea for this project already 10 years ago.
Wow.
But it takes a long time to write songs and get inspiration,
Yes.
And also the timing. And it turned out
I used to do poetry. I don't anymore, but I know it takes quite a while. You can't just force it to happen. Yeah.
No. So, but last year it was out, and in this I go through. I started with John Dee, and I also dive into what comes after John Dee, and not every part of the story, but Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophists and the neo-Theosophist with Besant and Alice Bailey, and I follow a lot with the Bailey's work and how she influenced a lot of things behind the scenes, and also the New Age movement, of course. And the United Nations, I mean, it's huge, and also the connections to that's the externalization of hierarchy. Actually, a Wardenclyffe song as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yes, and so I describe this how they have influenced the United Nations and the connections also to big organizations, international organizations like the World Economic Forum. And I talked about
in 2019 officially.
Yeah, exactly. And also how the Lucis Trust has had these cycle of conferences, and they have projected their light to the leaders of United Nations and World Economic Forum, and they view them as the forces for good.
Yeah, they have their world invocation prayer that they do.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the end of it, it says to lock the door where evil dwells. And I'm like, wait, which side are we locking it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm a little confused.
And it doesn't feel, I mean, reading this and an invocation, it's, I don't have that feeling for it. It's not like, who are we invoking here? Who is going to externalize?
the Christ, is it the Antichrist, or
yeah, what Christ is we're talking about?
Right?
Is it barbarous Christ or the cyber Christ?
It does feel like that. I call it cyber Satan. I don't think I coined that term, but that they resonates for me. Cyber Satan. That does feel like what they're trying to invoke. I mean, that's what Elon said, right? He said that AI is summoning the demon.
Yeah.
But yet he is summoning the demon. So.
Yeah, he is. he warns about it, and then he's making it happen.
I'm not sure if that's a revelation of the method sort of thing they're doing there, but yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, he's a strange character, you must say.
For sure.
Contradictory.
Yeah. He has that whole video where he talks about how he's doing his supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee. And he said Memphis was the capital of Egypt. And so he says, well, that might be where the new God comes from. I'm not sure how to read that one. Yeah. And then he has this other video when he talks about summoning the demon. And then he says, trust the people with the inverted pentagram and the holy water because it's going to work out. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
So we are doing and saying it in plain sight.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. That's why I ask if it's a revelation of the method. I don't know exactly, but it does seem to be hidden in plain sight. They're telling us what they're doing. So
yes.
Yeah,
and they have been doing this all the time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they've been talking about it for pretty openly for well over a century. So, yeah. So your book in the Temple of Solomon, you go through these New Agers and how they're tied to these big institutions like the UN, the World Economic Forum, Club of Rome.
Yes, so I go into I from Alice Bailey and Lucis Trust. I go into Barbara Marx Hubbard and also Irving Laszlo.
Yes.
And very, very influential and connected to the Club of Rome and the Club of Budapest. And it was through Laszlo that I found out a lot about this agenda, upon investigating, as I was doing my PhD studies, I investigated Club of Rome, and I found Irving Laszlo as one of the members, and he had been influential, and he had written reports for them, Goals for Mankind, and so on. And as I wanted to know more about him, I found that he had started this organization called the Club of Budapest, and also been involved in a couple of other strange projects. And I mean, this was at the time just before 2012, so he was involved in the 2012 movement, together with someone called Jose Arguelles. You know about him?
A little bit. I'm not as familiar.
A little bit, yeah. Very, very interesting guy. He started this harmonic convergence in 1987 with a mass meditation event, and also came up with the Mayan end date, that it was the 21st of December 2012. And built a whole movement behind that. And Laszlo was a part of this, and also Barbara Marx Hubbard. So I discuss these people, Barbara and Laszlo and Arguelles, and more or less presents their views, and that where it becomes very obvious that this is this is transhumanism in spiritual clothing. It's nothing else. And also I found a very, very peculiar web page called Noosphere Congress, or Noosphere Forum, and this was a project that was led by Jose Arguelles together with Irving Laszlo. And that was when I was kind of, wait a minute, what is this? Because I had just before that went into the Club of Budapest page, and the Club of Budapest, it was this very very top people, kind of statesmen and spiritual leaders, and people that very known, and it looked very serious. And then I just came to his other project, and then find the Noosphere Forum with images, extremely disturbing images about creating this nocracy, and a nocracy with and also, of course, enter the noosphere and create the noosphere, that humanity will migrate to more or less the digital realm. There were also pictures of the noosphere from the Noosphere Forum with where you talked about the technological singularity, and they had pictures with brain-computer interfaces, and with people connected to this. And I mean, this was in 2009. That I found this. So this was very, very early, before we had a fourth industrial revolution, and this was very, very underground, all these things, and that really blew my mind. I tried to show this to my colleagues, and they couldn't really. No,
no one could wrap their head around it.
No, it was impossible. But I actually had a university course about cybernetics, and I had this integrated in the course. And so I discussed the techno-spiritualism, and how the noosphere and the omega point, the Chardin's omega point, was kind of a same thing as the technological singularity. And there we can see also these two teams, with one that is the spiritual side of it, and the other is very, very technological, with Elon Musk but essentially it's the same in the end. It's the World Future Society playbook on how to achieve this. What did Barbara said? She said that it was the new order of the future or something like that in
Yes,
the
I
book
don't
of Revelation.
that quote.
Yeah, and develop this Homo Universalis.
Homo Universalis, right? Which is like echoing H.G. Wells, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Mm.
Yeah. So
H.G. Wells, of course, and I've seen you have written about this as well. So I've written also about H.G. Wells and also the origin of these ideas.
Yeah. So the cosmoerotic humanists, this is Mark Gaffney and his Eros Mystery School, which is, of course, about suprasex. He says it's not sexual, but it's just a radical love affair with the universe, whatever that means. But he's yes, but he's doing this cross promotion with Aubrey Marcus, and he's one of the three who wrote this manifesto on cosmoerotic humanists. So you have they did it in a tribute to David Temple. So David Temple is the pseudonym, but you're familiar with this, with Zach Stein, and who was actually just inducted to the Club of Rome last year. And all of these people.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Him, and him, Zach, Daniel Schmachtenberger, and Kenneth Wilber.
Yeah.
Right, so they write this, right? Based on Claire Graves' spiral dynamics, he does this altitude evolution color chart. But the three of them wrote this 42 propositions on cosmoerotic humanism, its first principles and first values of evolving perennialism. And you can find it at officeofthefuture.com. But they're all disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard. And they talk about this, going from how we have to go from Homo sapiens to Homo Universalis. We have to rewrite the story of the universe. So, yes, I do think they're obviously more overtly spiritualist, but we do have I think the Elon Musk and the Silicon Valley types are also spiritualists. They just don't lead with that. I mean, Elon does all this nodding to, the Saturn cult.
Yeah, yes.
Right? There's a lot of symbolism.
It's more of the male occult.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and the other is more feminine version of it.
I agree with that, right. Yeah. So I talk about the two, and that's why I say they operate through left and right. So and here's your thoughts on that. Like, the right seems to operate under the archetype of the patriarchal, more disciplinarian, authoritarian, whereas the left seems to operate, but it's still the same, mystery cults underneath, but the left is more the divine mother, the emotionally led and spiritual. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you would agree with that. So what do you think is where do you think we are going now? Like, I see all this stuff. I mean, certainly in the EU, they're talking about, I don't know if you have it already, your digital currency with the passports. And here they're talking about now, like, Trump banned the CBDCs, which is great, but he's talking about the cryptocurrencies, and he's talking about having to be backed by, using it as a reserve for the treasury, which none of this is making me feel warm fuzzy, but it just seems like he talks about freedom cities also, which sounds like it's just another 15-minute city. It's very clever marketing, right?
It's just marketing, and you have to market it differently in the United States compared to Europe,
right?
And Sweden. Sweden is very, very early with everything.
Yes.
And I write about Graham Molitor. Have you heard of him?
Who?
Graham Molitor. He was at the World Future Society, and he also worked with Nelson Rockefeller during his presidential campaigns in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And he worked a lot with kind of predicting the future, but he also made studies on how ideas evolve and gain traction and became popularized. And he said that what what happens in United States happened in Sweden 6 years ago. So Sweden is always the first country. That's the country that where they have tested. The elites of the world have their testing ground has been Sweden, because we are very adaptive, and we love technology. We're not conservative. Yes, there he is, Ray Molitor. Okay. So so I mean, we have the digital ID for everything. It's called the bank ID. Okay. And we have to use it when we